Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's track guide for the IRO4. It's a new season, and we're visiting a new track in the IRO4, VIR. And I am super excited for this combination. VIR and the IRO4 is a great combination. You can use the downforce of the car. So there are a bunch of parts of the track that are flat out. There will be a bunch of drafts, so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for overtaking. And there are really fast technical sections of the track and some tighter, slower technical sections of the track that mean you kind of have to test your skills in all realms. So I just think overall it's a very, very good combination. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at the lap before we dive into the details corner by corner. All right, and I do just want to say before we dive into the details and look at the track conditions and all that stuff, if you haven't, please consider subscribing now. It's super, super helpful for me if you subscribe because it helps me grow this channel and yeah, kind of gives me the motivation to continue with these track guides. Also, check out the description for a bunch of great things, including a link to this lap on Garage 61 if you want to compare your telemetry, a link to my Discord if you want to, catch up with me outside of these guides, look for coaching, just chat with me, come hang out. A link to my Twitch channel if you want to watch me on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Elgato con la pipa. And then an affiliate code for Muradness.com. Yeah, a link to our league, the Alt F4 Racing League. There's a bunch of stuff down there. Just check out the description. Okay, let's take a look at the track conditions. All right, and before we get started, let's take a look at our track conditions. We have a 26 degrees Celsius track and 23-degree air temperature with low usage at 25%. Keep in mind that the car does like lower track temperature, air temperature, and usage. If your usage or temperatures are higher, it's going to be harder to hit this time. If your usage and temperatures are lower, it's going to be easier to hit this time. As for our time, well, we did a full tank of fuel up here, binned it, decided to do another full tank of fuel. And then we got this 147.812, which is the lap we're going to talk about. I actually did do a faster lap down here, but this did have an off track, so it's not an actual legit faster lap. That said, the lap here just is quite difficult. It's a long lap. It is, yeah, there are a lot of ways to make very little mistakes, very little slides. So that's why you see a little bit of this inconsistency, a little bit of the struggle. I'm really trying to push the limits here, and it took a little bit longer to do than normal. That said, I really do love the lap here, so I had a really good time doing it. But yep, this 147.812 is the lap we're going to look at now. Turn 1 is a tricky hairpin that tightens on exit, so we have to be careful about running too wide or running deep in the braking zone and ending up in the grass. It's also one of the major passing zones here at VIR, so it's important to try different lines here when you practice to be comfortable going wheel to wheel. Given the shape of the exit, I would normally say to go for a later turn in, but for whatever reason, I had a hard time making that work here. In this case, the arrow sign is spot on for when we want to turn in, and there's some slight camber on the inside of the road that helps us as we travel through the corner. We can start braking in between the 2 board and the 1 board, and it's a fairly heavy braking zone, but as we start to turn in, we want to start trailing off the brakes to avoid locking up. Despite turning in a little bit earlier than we might expect, we're still looking for a later apex, and we want to try to keep the car fairly tight to the inside of the track as we work our way through the corner to minimize the distance traveled and use the slight camber as we mentioned before. On this lap, I never quite make it to the apex because I locked the inside front tire by having a little bit too much steering and braking going on at the same time, but I was still able to hold a tighter line partially due to the camber, which helped reduce the overall time loss because I stayed in that groove. Ideally, we want to just clip the apex at the end of the curbing. As we get to the end of the apex curbing, we also want to start getting back on throttle, and we want to keep as tight of a line as possible as we come through the later part of the corner to set ourselves up for turns 2 and 3. I also want to note that it can feel very slow getting to the apex, and in my opinion, this corner is a little awkward. But if you feel slow on entry, that's totally okay because a good exit here goes a long way. Turns 2 and 3 come back to back, and I treat them as a double apex where we actually ignore the first apex at turn 2. We want to stay wider than normal at the turn 2 apex because we want to be able to set up for a wider entry into turn 3, and cutting down towards the turn 2 apex gives us a lot more work to do to open up for turn 3. I generally like to stay middle of the road as we head towards turn 2 and start to point towards the outside curbing for the turn 3 entry as we exit turn 2. As we sweep out towards the turn 3 entry curbing, I like to try to maintain one steady arc. I'll also criticize myself here a little bit in that ideally we want to use as much of the road on entry as we can to open up turn 3 as much as possible. I consistently leave about half a car's width of tarmac on the outside, and that's something that I need to work on. That said, it's a comfort thing, and practicing using more of the track here is something I need to do and something good for you to do as well. If we can open up a little bit more here, we can take turn 3 a little bit faster. All of that said, it's another tricky corner where you're really looking to balance the car and maintain as much momentum as you can. The car can feel very on edge here, and we really want to avoid getting the rear of the car loose because going over the limit can quickly lead to a spin or running wide on exit. As we approach the entry curbing, we want to brake slightly to help the car rotate, but we don't need to brake too much. There are also a few approaches under braking that we can take here. I opt for a quick dab of the brakes on this lap, but a longer, lighter trail brake through the corner is also a viable option and something I played around with. There wasn't really a huge difference between the two here, and this dab of brakes is kind of what I've naturally started going with. The main thing on the brakes is not braking too much and upsetting the balance of the car. We want to make sure that the car feels settled and roughly neutral as it starts to rotate towards the apex. As the car begins to rotate towards the apex, we really just want to wait until it's pointed at the apex, and then we can start to get back on throttle. There's a lot of extra pavement on exit here, and we want to aim to use as much of that as we can get away with so we can be pretty aggressive on the throttle, knowing that we have this extra pavement to use. This will allow us to get on throttle earlier and maximize our exit speed. We just need to be careful of running too wide and touching the grass, which can either spin us or send us into the wall. Turn 4 is slow but deceptively tricky, and the exit here leads onto a very long flat out section, so our approach here is focused around maximizing that exit. With that in mind, we really want to grab a late apex that allows us to stay full throttle from the exit here all the way until turn 10. We'll start to brake just after we come off of the turn 3 exit curbing, and we need to be patient and wait for a later turn in so we can grab that later apex. As we turn in, our goal is to hold on to the later apex and stay as far to the left as we can as we get on throttle to help us open up for turn 5. This is the key that allows us to stay full throttle from here all the way until turn 10. If we push too far to the right on exit here, we'll cut off our approach to turn 5 and will likely need to lift to avoid running wide. Once again, exit is king here, so when you practice this corner, keep that in mind. Trying to push too much on entry or being too aggressive on throttle is only going to sacrifice our ability to make turn 5 without having to make any corrections. So remember, slow in, fast out. We don't want to make any corrections after we commit to throttle here so that we can stay flat out for as long as possible. So we need to make sure we're patient so we can open up for turn 5. We should be easily flat out through turn 5 all the way through turn 9 as long as we've set up our turn 4 exit well. Through this section, we're really focused on keeping the car smooth to avoid tire scrub and to maximize our speed. It's a little game of connect the dots where each apex is a dot and we want to draw the smoothest line that we can between them so we can be as fast as we can. Turn 10 is what I'd like to call a send it corner. It's super fast and exits downhill, so you can't see the exit and you have to trust the road will be there as you come over the crest, which is well beyond the point of no return. Hence, to go fast, you must send it. That said, it's actually a pretty straightforward corner, and the key here is using all of the apex curbing to set you up for a safe exit. As we approach turn 10, there is a slight dip in the road, and as we enter that dip, we can start to brake and turn in for the corner. As you can see here, we really don't need much brake pressure, essentially just enough to get the car rotating towards the apex. As mentioned before, we're aiming to use all of the apex, and on this lap, I actually failed to do so, which is why we tickle the grass on exit. Ideally, though, we want our left tires on top of the green and yellow curbing at the apex. By using all of the apex curbing, we increase the amount of track we use, which gives us more track to use on exit and avoid running wide. As we come over the crest, we want to keep our wheel turned, and as the car fades out towards the exit curbing, we want to aim to use all of the exit curbing available with our right tires on top of the green and yellow. Even when we get on the exit curbing, we want to continue our turning arc as we aim to go back to the left-hand side of the track as we approach turn 11. Turn 11 is really all about setting ourselves up for turn 12, so our focus here is using turn 11 as our braking zone and setup for turn 12. We can start braking and turning in right around the 2 board, and we're focused on keeping the car smooth and in control as we sweep through the apex and head out as far to the edge of the track on exit as we dare. This is another one of those places where I really need to work on using more track, and it's the same thing as in turns 2 and 3. It's really about practicing getting comfortable with using more of the track while keeping the car balanced, smooth, and in control and not running wide. The more track we can use here as we exit turn 11, the more we can open up for turn 12 and the better exit we can get there. Keep in mind that for turn 11, it is very easy to go in too hot, lock a tire, and end up in the wall. That's kind of the reason for my little bit of trepidation here. This is another place where we want to think about slow in and fast out, especially when we start focusing on turn 12. As we come through turn 11, we want to continue to trail off the brakes and slow as much as we can for turn 12 to set us up to get back on throttle for the run down this long back straight. Once again, turn 12 is all about the exit, and we're using turn 11 as our braking zone for turn 12. The more track we can use on entry here, the more we can open up our approach to turn 12, and the more speed we can carry through the corner and on exit. So once again, get comfortable living on the edge, but even I get a little sketched out by it, so don't feel too bad if it feels scary at first because I'm still building up to it as well. The main thing here for the turn 12 exit is being patient and waiting to turn in until later so that we can open up the exit and get back on throttle more quickly with a later apex. The exit here is pretty tight, and we can use all of the extra paved area to help maximize our exit speed. As we slow the car on entry, we're wanting to keep our eyes at the apex, and as soon as we can see the apex curbing, we want to commit to getting there. We want to aim to get as close to the curbing as we can without actually touching it though. The apex curbing here is raised, and I found that it gave me problems either pushing wide on exit or unsettling the car and delaying our throttle application, so I try to nip the curb but not fully use it. If we get to the apex late, like we're aiming for, we can get back to throttle aggressively as soon as we get there, and we're aiming to use all of the available pavement on exit to once again help us with a smooth and speedy exit. On exit, we want to keep things as smooth as possible as we start to shoot down this back straight. As an aside, you may hear this turn called oak tree from time to time, but notice there isn't actually an oak tree here. There used to be an oak tree here. Rest in peace, oak tree. Turn 13 doesn't technically exist according to the track map, so our next corner is turn 14. This is going to be another overtaking opportunity, so keep in mind that you're likely to be too wide here a few times this week, so try to practice alternate lines. That said, the first apex of the corner is really about slowing the car down as we head towards the turn 14A apex, or the second apex of the corner. Amazing corner naming system, am I right? We can start braking and turning in right around the one board, and our goal here is to get to the apex a little bit later and stay as far to the left as we can to open up for turn 14A. That said, be careful running too deep here under braking or waiting too long to turn in, because if you go off the track here, you're off to pasture and in the grass for a very long time. With this in mind, it's important to point out that we're limited on our entry speed and our exit is pretty fast, so we're really wanting to focus on having a clean exit here to maximize our lap time, so don't worry so much if the entry feels a little slow. As mentioned, as we come through the first apex, we want to stay to the left to open up for the second apex. As the second apex comes into view, we can start to turn in towards it. As we meet up with the second apex, we want to hug it for a little bit of time as we come through the corner because the exit tightens up on us. We want to be patient with the throttle here to avoid running wide on exit, but as we come to the apex, we can commit back to throttle and continue our turning. The car will get a little light on us as we start to go down the hill and it'll start to want to push wide, but we can trust that the grip is here as long as we were a little bit patient getting back on throttle. We'll carry all of this speed through the turn 15 apex as we approach turn 16 for the final braking zone. Turn 16 is easily flat out on its own, but the main thing here to consider is how it sets us up for turn 17. We're shooting downhill here and heading into the main straight, so we really want to maintain as much speed as we can through this section to ensure that we're going as fast as possible heading across the line and down towards turn 1. That said, we want to aim to hit the apex of turn 16 just a little bit later and stay as far to the left as we can to open up for turn 17 as much as possible to help maintain as much speed as we can as we start to brake for turn 17. Turn 17 is a very fast corner, and as just mentioned, it's set up by how we take turn 16. As we come off the turn 16 curbing, we want to start braking and get the car committed towards the turn 17 apex. Similar to other high speed corners, we're not looking to brake a lot here, just enough to get the weight of the car forward to help convince it to start rotating. The key here after braking and turn in is waiting for the car to be ready to commit back to throttle. If we go for it too soon, the car will push wide on exit or will have to lift to avoid running wide on exit. The main thing I'm waiting for is the compression at the bottom of the hill. As the car comes to the bottom of the hill and starts to compress, we can get back on throttle, using that bit of compression to help hold grip and cement our rotation. From that point forward, it's all about maintaining the turning arc and not having to make any corrections. The smoother we stay on exit here, the less tire scrub we have, the more speed we'll carry, and the faster we'll be heading across the finish line. All right, and that concludes the track guide. Once again, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much for watching, for commenting, for subscribing, for the likes, all the kind of things. If you come and watch me on Twitch, I really appreciate you being there as well. Yeah, that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the lap one more time before we head off. But I do hope you have a fun week of racing here at VIR, and I hope to see you on track. Until next week, take care of yourselves.